it's Don the Auction Professor. Today I wanted to touch on a few things that are turning up quite often this time of year. And again, I don't do much clothing at all. I do military. I buy a ton of military. It's an item I haven't shown a lot in my videos, but I'm probably going to start touching on some of the military that I do buy and do collect to some extent. I buy uniforms, I buy military items, even weaponry I will buy. Mostly bladed weaponry like swords and bayonets, you know, combat knives and things along that line. I don't really mess with guns very much. I have in the past, you know, I've had some really nice pieces. I had an 1808 Springfield. If anybody knows what that is, that's like a 6-foot tall gun that was used in the War of 1812. That's probably the oldest military-issued firearm that I've gotten. I've had some flintlocks from the 1600s on many occasions, including dueling pistols. But just with the issues and the things go around with them, and I've had kids, so I don't mess with guns very much. Unless it's a quick flip, something I'll have in and out and it'll be gone. But I do buy uniforms. I buy military uniforms almost every single week of the year. In some instances, I buy many at the same place. A picker might show up and have 20, 30 items. In some instances, I've gotten an entire footlocker full of the entire garb of a soldier or a naval officer or something along that line. I don't even care what military they are from for the most part. I'm just going to show you a few and I'm going to talk a little bit about them. Again, I do get these all the time. I'm going to show you one in a few minutes that was at a thrift store that I found in the Halloween section. Every year, that's one of the few places I go to religiously to check for collectibles. I will go to a thrift store or a bunch of thrift stores in a day. I'll hit every one I can think of that has a Halloween section out, and I'll always bomb the Halloween sections. I don't even look through most of the regular clothing, but I do look through the Halloween section. Just because a lot of people when these come in, they don't think there's much value, and they will just dump them off in the Halloween section. Now, you'll find these at estate sales very, very often. Flea markets, antique malls. If you know what you're doing enough and can look up and do a quick comp search in the store, you're going to make out like a bandit with a lot of these items. Now, I'm going to show you, as I said, just a few pieces here and just discuss these. The first piece here, this is a World War I Army uniform from, say, 1915. This is the real deal. You can see the color, even with some of the issues here, which it has some mothing. It's got some little holes in it here and here. There's even some on the sleeve. It's got a real nice cut, though. That's usually what I look for in these. It almost looks like a tailored shirt, but it's not. Now, this is an actual, I guess you'd say it's a shirt. A tunic would be a correct term. This is the real deal. World War I buttons. Not only that, when I got it, it actually had this pinned in one of the pockets. Now, I don't know if they saw this. Chances are they didn't, because they probably would have priced this much higher. I paid 25 bucks for this piece. This is a dog tag from the soldier that wore this. And his number matches inside this shirt, so I know it is his. So I can actually tell you who wore this, where he fought, what happened to the gentleman. So that's something I always look for. And again, I paid 25 bucks for this. This is $150 any day of the week, even with the little pitfalls and the moth holes. I would never repair it. It would be just as it is. Now, it is missing the collar discs. One way to tell if it's an older uniform, obviously the wool, but World War II is wool too, but there's usually stitching where the collar disc would go, so it wouldn't put a hole in the collar. That is the key thing that I look for. That is the biggest difference that I always see in 1920s or before uniforms. Now, they're all not like that, because some uniforms didn't have collar discs to begin with, but World War I and World War II on do. You can also tell by the black painted buttons. As well, I've taken one off. I've examined the buttons closely. Not actually removed it from the tunic, but I did examine them. They're actual vintage buttons. This is all legit. Everything you would want to see in a jacket. Now, I'm not going to open it up because I spent the time to close it, but the inside has a nice covering so that it doesn't damage from inside belts or anything like that. It's a nice heavy piece. This is the real deal. This is what I look for. You can see the color difference too from the modern ones. It's not as green. It's lighter, olive green, I guess maybe, versus a drab. But it's a very nice piece. Now, here is another full uniform. This was another thrift store piece right here. This one here, I think I got. Geez, I'll explain the whole story real quick. I went to a thrift store that I go to occasionally. This I've had for a little while, just because I'm not in any rush to get rid of it. I've got a ton of uniforms, and this is great trading material when I get up something that a friend has or something. So for me, I'm going to hang on to some of these pieces. But I bought his trench coat. It's more like a field coat that goes down past the knees. I didn't bring it out because it's huge, it's heavy, but I knew what it was instantly. It was marked 1943 U.S. Army. It's a legit piece. I bought that for 10. I came back a couple days later. The uniform was sitting out there. The pants were separate, and then the jacket was in another spot. They didn't realize that all of the medals and pins were off of this, other than these couple little patches. Now, I bought it anyway because I already got the coat, and now, boom, I found this. A lot of these items, when you find them, the name of the person is actually written inside. And sure enough, the name on the inside, written inside here, is the same name that's on the coat that I got. I pull out the pants, it's the same name as well, so I know I've got a match set from World War II. This is an Ike jacket, they're called. And on with the story now. Now I have the coat, the pants in one visit, the overcoat, trench coat in another. These showed up in the display case a week later. I thought I'm never going to find them, I'm not going to worry about it. These were in there. I looked at them closely, I realized they were vintage World War II. I bought them on a chance. And sure enough, these all fit. The pinholes, the marks are identical to match it. Everything about it is right. Where they pin on, how they pin on, the locations, the type of metals it would be. They match everything. It's a technical, I believe he's a sergeant. I'm not up on the ranks as much because that's not important to me. I know a clover leaf for lieutenants and things like that. And this is, I would say, like an ordnance artillery, so Army artillery technical, sergeant or technical, whatever you would call his position. So it's a good item here too. Now, I've got the overcoat, trench coat all together. So again, I've got, I want to say I got like about 20 bucks into everything I bought. Now again, another 120, 150 bucks on the right day. This has no damage to it. Now, let me put them together. You can easily see the color difference in these. Lighter color earlier, the darker color later. That's just the way it looks. The color changed over in like the 30s, if I remember right, late 20s, early 30s, so they'll go from the lighter color to the darker color. Now this one, again, it has a name. I can look them up, like on sports items when autographs and things. Stuff like this, if you got a name to tie to it, you can get a better value out of it because you can track down the gentleman's record. If he served in combat in specific battles, like the Battle of the Bulge or D-Day or something along that line, the value can go way up. Now, I've had airborne jackets from, D-Day with, provenance, and those sold for a ton of money, and I do mean a ton of money. I've had bomber jackets from specific bombers with the painted logo on the back, and I've also had ones with patches that were like this big on the back of bomber jackets. I've had Flying Tiger items, which are the most prestigious items you can get, photos and other things like that. They sell for a ton of money. So military-wise in general, you've got money into. These show up at flea markets all the time. And again, as I said, this time of year, these items are going to be showing up at the flea markets, garage sales even, and the thrift stores. So, you're going to find these type of items. Because people think they're costumes. They think that's about all they're worth. So, again, I'm going to be covering some more military. You're going to see some various military from various wars. I've sold stuff all the way back to the Revolutionary War and somewhat before it with the French-English wars prior to that even. So, as old as I can get it, pieces, parts, whatever, I will buy it. I'll buy paper. I'll buy, jackets, buttons especially. We've sold buttons for several $1,000s for a military button from the Confederate Army. I've sold Civil War buttons for hundreds on a usual basis. I sell them all the time. I've got hundreds of them in stock now. I've shown dozens and dozens of Civil War buttons and other buttons in my videos, so you know that I do get into this material. But again, I'm going to be showing you some odder items. I plan on doing at least 2 or 3 videos just on military to give you some ideas. This is just an introduction because right now you're going to need to look for these right this minute because this is what's going to show up. And again, I've got like 45 bucks into these 2 items. My return on these 2 items here is going to be like, and if I'm giving them away, I'm going to get at least 200 back. I could sell these locally very easily. I could probably take this one to a military show locally and get 100 bucks for it in just a few minutes. especially with the dog tag. So dog tags are always worth money. Just the dog tag alone, if I track down the gentleman's history, it could be worth some money. So again, these items all are good. Condition-wise, though, as I said, and this one has moth holes from the World War I era. Good, bad ones right here. Those aren't as key as they would be on something newer. Now, if the item was newer like this, those moth holes would be a big issue because these aren't as scarce as a World War I uniform. Now, I'll buy anything World War I. One thing I could say is these look more like Boy Scout colors. So if you run into Boy Scout pants that are wool and have this same lighter color, sometimes they're not Boy Scout pants. Some of the military had buckles around the edges of the pant legs at the bottom. So look for things like that. I have spats that go with these. On occasion, I've run into the work boot or the actual combat boots from World War I and beyond. I've had uniforms like this from the Marines from the Spanish-American War. I've had long National Guard uniforms from the 1870s and 80s, the long coats with the tails and tucks. So they're all worth money. I buy them all. I've got a ton of military items in the house right now. I've got a ton of the material in. So again, I'm going to go over some of these. It'll be a new area to look for, something new. So for those of you who like clothing and still want to do some clothing, this gives you an option here to look for different items in clothing that you may have walked right by on a daily basis. Because I do run into some form of military at almost any big large size thrift store, including Savers. I've run into many uniforms, including firemen's uniforms from the 20s and the Savers at the Halloween section just last year, so before they closed, obviously. So anyway, that's what I have for you today. Good items, something to look for. I'd call it a BOLO every day of the week. And again, this is key time to find some of these in more readily available places, like a thrift store or something, versus having to go to an estate. So these do show up, again, as I said, at estate sales all the time. But again, Don the Auction Professor, if you like the video, please hit the like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified when we post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell a friend.